Today, I am going to go over what I find to be most helpful to my parents when I cover it at the parent orientation meeting at the beginning of each year. That it gave you some perspective about the trends and the things that I find throughout the years. And if we haven't met before, hi, my name is Erica Lynn, and I'm a homeschooling mom of 4, and it is my hope to help you make homeschooling become easy too. So I'm putting all the things that I have learned over the years into these videos to help you speed up your journey and not make the same mistakes I made. And so directing, I have been directing for 5 years now, and I feel like I've really settled into what my favorite things are. So we always start our parent orientation with prayer. I just ask that God help each of the parents to support their children this year, that God help me to support the parents, and that God help both of us to give the kids what they need to get for the plans He has for their life. That's truly my prayer for each of these students. At the beginning of the meeting, I do go over some specific rules or procedures that are unique to our community, and I get the logistical things done right off the bat. The other thing I like to do is I like to prepare some sort of charcuterie style feast that I lay out before the parents. And I put fruits and vegetables and nuts and meats and cheese and crackers and breads and jams and all sorts of things. I like to use the poem from the back called Imagine a Table. This is on page 126, and it's actually in every single level of challenge. And then there's a question section on page 127. And so I kind of try to replicate this just slightly. And my purpose and vision here is I want the parents to understand, like walking up to a buffet, when we look at the food set on the table in front of us, so there's no way you could eat everything on this table. There's just too much. In the same manner, I have all the Challenge B books set up on a separate table, set out aesthetically. And I tell them in the same manner, there's no way your child is going to consume, process, grasp, and acclimate to all the wealth of information that they're going to be presented with this year. So remember that when you come to Challenge B, it is like a buffet of information in front of you. And there's going to be some things that you really enjoy and you're going to go back for seconds. And then there's going to be some strands that you really struggle with. You don't want a bunch of those, or just take so much time. You kind of get full and you can't consume anymore. There's always going to be some things left on the table, and that's okay. What Cece has done is presented you with a lot of options and a lot of goodness. And so just remember, you're not going to learn it all. You're not going to master it all, but you're going to be exposed to this delightful course of information and knowledge, goodness, truth, and beauty. And you're going to take in what is important to you. And I encourage parents and students to lean into the strands that really resonate with them and to graze the ones that don't connect on a heart level. So, with that being said, I let everybody eat and gives them something to enjoy while I go over the more specific parts of this year. After that, I'm going to show the parents the brain books that I presented to the students. One of the things I like to do in Challenge B, being the 8th grade year, is really give the students a taste of organization and note-taking. So I do something called a brain book. The brain book is a CC term. It really just means note-taking, how to take notes. So I do a 3-ring binder, and I divide it out by tabs for each strand, and I have loose paper in there for note taking, and then I have let me get over here, copy charts in the very back for Latin and for reasoning, and for there's a reasoning copy chart, and then for Adamus, and then in the very back we have our timeline folder that we'll be using for research. And so these are all things that we're going to be going over in class, and I tell the parents each of them gets to pick a different color binder for their student. So I've got 12 binders set up, and we'll walk through it just a little bit. If you want to put together a brain book like this, I have a whole nother video, and there is a link. I sell all of the worksheets in one bundle on my Classful site, and that's linked in the description below. So you can purchase that as well. I'm just going to point out a couple of things in here to them. First of all, I like them to know if they turn to the exposition tab, I have a worksheet in here called How to Read Literature Like a Professor. And this is literally from the book, How to Read Literature Like a Professor. These are my hand notes that I took when reading this book. And it's just so full of good information on how to read novels and how to get the most out of it as possible, how to read between the lines, how to dive into the symbolism and the figures of speech that they use. And we use a lot of these in the books that we use over the first semester in Challenge B. So I asked them to have their students read that before the first day of class, and then we will use it for a part of our discussions throughout exposition. And we also have the copy charts in the back, which I will assign to them to copy at different weeks when it's appropriate and it goes along with the lessons in the guide. Then I just ask them to have their students bring that to class every week. That and their guide is part of the required things that they need to be toting back and forth. I also want all of the parents to know that as we go through Challenge B, we are actually tackling 11 curriculums and 3 different languages, okay? So just know there's a lot in this year. There are actually 4 of our strands switch curriculums at semester break. So as we move from first semester to second semester, 4 strands switch curriculum, and then research switches a second time. So we actually go through 3 different curriculums in research. And there is a reason for that. It is a wonderful thing. Leah Bortons is laying a foundation for science and how to study higher academic science. Also, we study 3 languages. We not only study Latin, but we study algebra, and that is its own symbolic language, and reasoning this year. Our intermediate and introductory logic books is its own language, especially when you get into second semester with intermediate logic. It's going to look a lot like algebra. It's like sentences with just variables only. So these really are like 3 different types of languages that they are learning this year. So I just like the parents to really have an understanding of how much we're covering, what a wide breadth of topics and information we are covering here. And they're not going to master everything, and that's okay, because that's actually not even the goal this year. This year is more of an exposure year, and we're learning and exposing ourselves to a lot of different things, and that's going to play out for us in the next 4 years as we go in a little bit deeper in each of these subjects. We'll understand the wide picture of everything that it encompasses, and then we'll get to study in depth a little bit slower and a little bit more cohesively. Okay, another thing is, a few years back, Leah Bortons kind of did a tour around the United States, and she did some talks, and she came to Missouri, and there were 3 things she said, looking back, I would do more of. And I just tell my parents this because I want to keep the main focus the main focus. Number 1, Leah says, I would have read the Bible more, memorized more verses, and talked more. So let's just remember that. Number 2, I would have prayed my kids get what they need to fulfill their purpose. And number 3, I would have loved on them more. So let's just remember, with all this knowledge and everything that they could be learning, that the main point is loving on our kids, reading the Bible, and praying for them. So I think that's a good reminder so we don't get sucked into busyness. The second thing Leah Borton said that our community was really struck by is she talked about, when you sign up to be a part of CC, your commitment, or at least part of your commitment, is to the community. And so it's commitment to be there on your community day and to contribute and to participate. And if we're not all contributing and participating, then it's taking away from the experience for everybody. So think about, if you're going to scale a particular strand, how can your students still participate on Community Day? Also, when are you going to come and watch class? I ask my parents to come in at least once each semester, and if you're particularly struggling with a strand at home, come set in for it in class every week. I've had usually a couple parents each year that come in and set in for the reasoning strand so that they can get the instruction and work through the examples. And I allow them to be a part of the question asking and the conversation. We're all learning together here, and it's just a really beautiful thing. So be a part of that. Then I like to allow my parents to dive in, and we take 20 minutes to kind of practice a certain element of each strand. So I divide them into 6 groups, and we each take a strand, and I have a little exercise for them to do so they can kind of dive in and find out, like, what is this actually like for my student to do reasoning, do research, do the other. And then when we come back from that 20-minute time and I start going through each strand one at a time, I ask the parents who participated in each activity at the beginning of that to tell me, what did you learn going through this, and what would you like other parents to know? So I'll try to give you some of the most popular feedback as we go through. I start with devotions, and I explain to them what we're going to do for devotions. So first semester, I have my students read through the entire book of James using the highlighting method. And if you want more information about that, I have that detailed out in my Brain Book video and the schedule for that in the Brain Book bundle that you can download. Second semester, we read the book Do Hard Things as our devotion time, and we discuss that in class. And that's been a really life-changing conversation for most of the students that I have had. The next strand we go into is logic. Logic always means math for CC. So this year your students should be about at the pre-algebra level. I always have half the class behind, and I'll usually have one person who's ahead. The things I kind of tell parents with math is just remember, in 55 minutes once a week, I cannot teach your student what they need to know about math. So I'm assuming you have a plan. Math Map starts with Challenge B next year. So I think that's going to change this whole process a ton. I think that's going to be great. And the other thing is, pre-algebra is the first time your student is going to be tackling an abstract math. All the way up and through before pre-algebra, everything your child has learned in math before is tangible. They can build it out with blocks. They can show it. They can display it. Now we are starting to work with imaginary numbers and abstract concepts and things that don't actually exist in physical form. Okay, so we're playing math. So that may be a difficult transition for some kids. That's natural. That's normal. So expect that. On the other side of that, I really do believe every parent is still capable of guiding their students through math at the pre-algebra level. Most of us don't realize it, but we still use a lot of pre-algebra concepts. And if you sit down and reread the lesson, I think it'll come back to you and you'll be able to walk them through that. I don't think you have to really pull in a lot of outside help if you're not strong in math until next year when you get into Algebra 1. In class, I like to focus right now on a lot of the vocab memorization because I feel like that's oftentimes lacking from the curriculum at home. And having those terms memorized helps a ton on ACT and SAT. So I let the parents know that's what we're going to be doing. I've given some parents a assignment from logic, and I'll ask them going through that assignment, what did you feel? What did you want to know? Usually there's nothing earth-shattering about math. Everyone kind of understands what you're getting into. Okay, the next strand I'm going to go through is grammar. So in my 20-minute exercise, I gave the parents a sentence to translate. I gave them the books, and they were allowed to use any resources there, any copy charts. And they worked on translating a difficult sentence, one from the middle of the book. And so I'm going to ask them, what did you discover in Latin? Typically, what comes back is parents were like, what was crazy was it took so long. Like, I could find the answers, I could research it, I could figure it out, but it took a long time. I only got halfway through the sentence, or I only finished one sentence in 20 minutes. And that is something that is very pivotal. I do believe every student is capable of learning Latin. I love the way Henley lays out the curriculum. I took 5 years of French in high school and could barely write an essay when I graduated. But having studied Henley Latin for 1 year, I understand more about Latin and French than I ever did in high school. So I think the curriculum is written well. And the biggest catch is not that kids can't figure it out. It's that it takes a lot of time. And sometimes you just run out of time, which is why as directors, at least in my community, we totally recommend students time their grammar strand, and you don't put more than an hour a day into it. So that kind of summarizes a lot of the feedback that I've gotten. And then I'm going to go into some of the details. Last year you covered lessons 1 through 15 in Challenge A. This year we're covering lessons 1 through 29. So everything you covered last year, we're going to complete by first semester. About week 5, your students are going to look at me and go, oh my gosh, why is Latin so much easier this year than it was last year? I don't know why I ever complained last year. And I'm just going to laugh because it happens every year. And it's because this is their second tour through Latin. It is just easier. They've already been exposed to these ideas. They've already practiced this. So it's such a beautiful thing. And I just love it when they say it. That being said, we're going to get to second semester and think of it like essentials after Faces of History is over. You just get bogged down in so many verbals and such detailed information, it starts going over people's heads. This is where we're going to hit with Latin second semester, is we are going to start really tackling verbs. Up to this point, they've only been given 1% of the information about verbs. We have a lot of information to cover about verbs, and it's not impossible, but it does take some thinking. It does take some time. So be prepared for that. I love the I Heart Latin YouTube channel for all of the lessons up through 15. Unfortunately, she does not go past that. Also, think I like the CC Connected videos for Latin. They've gotten a lot more this year. They have some on every lesson now. So check those out. If you go to CC Connected, you search under grammar. It does not come up on your weekly breakdown. You have to go to grammar, and then I would just sort by videos, and then you'll see it lesson by lesson, and go in there and pull out if you're struggling with the lesson, pull out that video and watch it. They're a little bit slow. And they're a little bit long-winded, but I think they are hitting the points and the information that you need to. So that's a free resource that's really helpful when your student is stuck at home. I also like Latin with Andy and Jam with Latin, Henley in a Hurry. All of these resources are great. So really, really plug in second semester. The students are going to feel so comfortable first semester of Challenge B because it's going to feel exactly like last year. They're going to know what they need to do, and they're going to take ownership of their work. And that's exactly what this year is about. Ownership builds discipline. Okay. So we want them taking ownership. The thing is, we're going to come in second semester and Latin's going to get really hard. And if you don't step back in or give them another tool or a resource, I see the drop-off rate get really high second semester. So I want parents to be proactive with Latin second semester. Oh, I do always tell the parents, if you need help tabbing your book for Latin, I do have a video here that walks through how to tab it all the way cover to cover, and it matches the Latin charts that I have in the brain book as far as color coding and some things like that. So if you are an organization nerd like me, you'll enjoy that video. Our third strand is research. So I'll have given the parents a little mini paper to write about an astronomer, and I'll ask them what did they learn about it. Usually it's very basic. This felt like an essentials paper. I did some research. It felt a lot like essay number 6, an IEW that you do in essentials, where you take 2 sources, you merge them together and give a presentation. And that's exactly right. In fact, I recommend that you use the outline for essay 6 from IEW to put together most of your astronomy papers. The research appendix, you need to tab it in your guide because it is your lifeline this semester. Every week we're doing about the same thing, but something different. So we usually write an essay on an astronomer, but there's also always some sort of different project to go along with it. This could actually be a fun, creative strand for your students who have creative tendencies. So I recommend you look through that research section. The information is not in the weekly guide, okay? You have to go to the research appendix every week to find out specifically what you're doing. I also recommend you use my supplies list, which if you bought my daily lesson plan, that is included in it. It is also on my Classful, which I will link below. You get this supplies list because every week for research, you're going to need something random. And so I've put together a list of all the supplies that you need for the entire semester, so you can just make one trip to the store and pick up all the poster board, all the foam, styrofoam balls, and the paints and the flags and everything that you need to do all of your projects. Let's see. I encourage the students to use their IEW dress ups when they do their paper. There's a couple of great sources I like. I really love the website called famousscientists.org that has short and sweet information on these astronomers. It has almost all of them. I also really like the CC Scientist cards from Foundations. Those are really helpful. It's a very short source, and when you're writing a paper every week, you don't want to be bogged down by reading a long source. So pick something short. I also say if you want to practice going to the library and picking out a book to read, I think that's a great skill. Go to the children's section, pick out a kid's book on these astronomers, because you don't need that much information. You're writing a short paper. You want to be able to read the book in 15 minutes and then pull out the information you needed and write your paper. This is more about writing and less about researching every single thing. I do recommend you write these papers in the MLA style. You do not have to. You can do a handwritten paper, but it's a good thing to start practicing now and getting comfortable with how to type out MLA style papers. The supplies list you get from CC in the CC magazine recommends that you need a science journal. You do not need a science journal. You just have to write your astronomer papers. There's nothing else that you need to do in a science journal. So you don't need to get that. The timeline you'll be adding to every week. If you bought my brain book, I have the timeline system in there. We do those together in class. Okay, and then second semester, we're going to be reading Defeating Darwinism. We will be using the highlighting system to mark this book. That's on page 176 in your guide. And so we'll be using blue, pink, orange, yellow, and green. So make sure they have a good highlighter set. And I will link my favorite ones down below because they're click-on highlighters. And so I can use one hand to click it on while I'm using my other hand to hold my book still, and I can highlight and put it away. That book is really written at a collegiate level. So I always tell my parents, this is a great one to read together with your student. They're going to have a very hard time understanding what the author is saying without some extra direction. After doing this for 5 years or 4 years in a row, I realize every year I have my students coming to class going, well, I read it, but I don't understand what he said. So if you cannot read this with your student, I have actually put together some videos of me reading the Defeating Darwinism, just like a read aloud, out loud, and then stopping at the end of each section and trying to help them summarize and assimilate the information that we just read. So that can be a good resource also. And I had really good luck with my class last year, getting them to comprehend more of the information in the book. And so you can find those on my Challenge B playlist. Finally, after we finish Defeating Darwinism, we are going to jump into Atomus, which is a very easy curriculum. It's a lot of fun. We're kind of back to the grammar stage in this. We're just learning some facts and just learning the basics of chemistry, which you're going to actually tackle in Challenge 3. They do have to memorize the first 20 elements, which we have a song from Foundations, I believe, that memorizes the first 13. And so you can just extend that song to 20 and memorize the whole thing. And then we're also going to be learning the parts of an atom. I do like to tell my parents at this point, I know a lot of people can think badly upon CC's science regimen because we don't start any hardcore science classes until their freshman year, versus a lot of students are taking physical science in 7th or 8th grade and moving on to biology their freshman year. Here's the thing. Number one, your students are still going to get all the sciences. They're getting physical science, biology, chemistry, and physics. All right. That is plenty of science. The reason CC is doing this is for a purpose. It seems to me what they've done here is you go in to Challenge A and you do a science experiment and you learn, hey, I know how to research. I did a science experiment. I too am a scientist. There is nothing more special about other scientists than me. I can follow this procedure and do this. Oftentimes, I realized I made some mistakes along the way. Probably other people make mistakes along the way too. That's a great lesson to learn. In addition to that, you've written a scientific paper now. So this should help show you too can read other scientific papers and read other lab reports and learn from those as well, okay? So we've laid that foundation in Challenge A. Then we're going to come into Challenge B. We are going to study the history of science through astronomy. I don't know why, but it seems like all major scientists who have had a big effect on the course of science were astronomers. Okay. So this is apparently the science field to be in. We're studying all of this, and guess what we are learning as we go through this history? Some of these guys got it really, really wrong, and people believed them for hundreds and thousands of years. They believed them because they were the expert, and then come to find out later they were wrong. So we want to just humble ourselves and recognize if the scientific expert has been wrong in the past, there's always a chance they're wrong today. Okay. Then we're going to jump into defeating Darwinism. All right. The main thesis of the entire book is that as much as the scientific community would like to say that evolution is a proven fact, there is no more evidence for evolution than there is for creation. Neither one have been observed, and neither one can be recreated in an experiment. So there's no solid scientific proof. There's just theories, postulations, guesses, and that's okay. But until we have more information, we need to remember they're both on the same playing field. So the reason CC has such a slow start to science is to be able to lay the foundation of really who is the authority in science and what is scientific truth and what standard does scientific truth have to be held to. And then starting next year, they will start their science courses, and they are going to get lots of science. Okay. The next strand we have is reasoning, and I had the parents try to turn a paragraph into a syllogism for their activity. So I'm going to ask them now, what did you think? What I usually come back with, in fact, I had my husband do this one year and a friend of ours who is a professional engineer, and they were reading through this and they came back and they go, here's the thing. I couldn't even make it through the text to get to the problems. And I was like, thank you. That's exactly what I wanted you to share with the parents, okay? Reasoning is hard, and that's okay. It's okay that your student doesn't get it because it's hard for us as adults to even get it sometimes. So what we are really studying in reasoning is logic. Logic is the art and science of thinking well. This is a classical subject, which means it was taught a long time ago, but it is not in our school curriculum today. People are not taught how to critical think, how to reason, how to process, how to logic. So this is something almost completely new for your students. The introductory logic is a full year high school curriculum. The intermediate logic is a full year high school curriculum, and we're covering both of them in 1 year at the 8th grade level. This is not a recipe for mastery, and that's okay because that's not the goal. It's all right if they don't fully understand everything in these curriculums, or even if they don't fully understand half of it. The vision this year is we are covering this broad exposure to everything that logic encompasses. We're trying to show the students this is logic and this is logic and this is logic and here's where it goes and here's where it goes off in tangents. And these are all the things that we can do with logic. We're doing that because this is their first tour through reasoning. They are going to come back in challenge 1 and challenge 2, and they are going to slow way down and they're going to dive in deep to sections of this, and they are going to master it in challenge 1 and challenge 2. We don't have to master it this year. All right. So just take a deep breath and relax for that. Something I do for my parents, however, first semester with introductory logic, I really feel like you can do it. Your student can read the book. They can master the problems. And if they need extra help, ask a classmate, ask me, we can get it done. Second semester is much more difficult. And so intermediate logic, I have two recommendations. Number one, you have to buy the DVDs and you have to watch them. I don't think you can do it without them because you have to remember this is a math curriculum. And if you don't watch the teacher building the problem step by step by step, like you do in algebra, then you don't understand how you got from the first step to the last step. That's why the videos are so important. All right. The second thing is I do put together and organize a study group, and I ask one of our challenge 3 or challenge 4 students who's good at reasoning to come back and lead that for the 8th grade students. And I organize it, but I have the parents there. And so I'm not actually there for the study group. I have the parents there to supervise. And then I have the student tutor leading it. And then I ask all the families to pitch in a few dollars each week to pay them. And so that has been something that's helped a lot. And I asked the tutor to work through half of the problems from their homework. That way the kids can see how to work out each type of problem. They'll have 2 or 3 or 4 different types of problems they do in their homework. And I asked them to work through each different type, at least one example problem, up to half of them. And then the kids can go home and struggle through the other half on their own. And some of them will get it and some of them won't, and that's okay. But at least they've seen it done. And usually at least the students can understand it when I'm in class helping them or when they're in study group and the tutor's helping them. That's okay. For the broad understanding, that's enough for this year. Because like I said, next year, they're going to have their second tour through reasoning. It's going to make a lot more sense because they're exposed to it more and they're going to go slower and they're going to go more in depth. Our next strand is exposition. And I gave people a writing assignment. I had them read a little bit and then write the thesis and 3 proofs. I had them put together a thesis and 3 proofs from the passage that I had them write. So I asked the parents, what did you learn about exposition? And usually it's pretty standard. You know, they've done this last year in Challenge A. So now we're kind of starting to become comfortable with this writing process. And, so we'll have varying things come back, like maybe we wanted more time or I didn't like, brainstorming my proofs, I got my proofs right away or, something along those lines. So this is really going to be a much easier strand this year. They're doing the exact same thing they did last year. So the only things I want to point out to the parents are, number one, we're not starting with essay 1. We skip essay 1 and essay 3, all right? We're only writing 5 essays this semester. We're going to do 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The second thing I want them to know is when we get to essay 7, that is actually the complete persuasive essay outline. So even when we keep going further in the curriculum, we're only adding in more figures of speech. We are not adding in more outline elements. I also like to review this is a 3-week cycle. And then remember this curriculum is building. So everything that I put into all the brainstorming worksheets that I used in week 1, the invention week, need to continue to be used through every essay in the future. So when I'm on essay 7, I'm doing on the invention week, I'm doing the new brainstorming worksheet. I'm also doing all the previous ones that we've done the weeks before that. And when we get to the outline week, I'm adding in a new component of an outline, but I'm also keeping all the other components of the outline we've studied in all the essays up to this point. And then when we get to our elocution week, I'm adding in a new figure of speech, but I'm also using all the previous figures of speech up to that point, which you don't have one in essay 1. So by the time you get to essay 7, they should have 6 figures of speech in their essay, okay? And so that's something that we'll be looking for in classes, that they're hitting all those components. And if you want more information about how to teach LTW, then I do have a video of our parent teaching on LTW from the last 2 years. I've got 2 different videos here, and you can go back and watch one of those. And this is just us raw and having a good time with it, but walking through how to do this curriculum. I also have a grading rubric. If you want to grade your student's essay, That is in my Classful account, and is also, if you get my daily schedule, the Best Challenge B Year, it comes with the schedule and all my other things. That grading rubric is in there, so you can use that. Second semester, we're going to switch gears and we're going to start reading and writing a short story. I love the way this curriculum is laid out because it's a CC curriculum, so it lines perfectly with the 4 days of the week. So you're going to, each week we're going to focus on one component of writing a story. Like one week we're going to talk about how to develop your characters. And then you're going to read a couple of examples of short stories that have really well developed characters in them so you can see how it can be done. And then we've got some exercises you're going to work through to develop those characters, and you're going to do that for your main character and supporting character, and you're going to bring those to class, and we're going to discuss them and brainstorm together and critique each other and encourage each other to improve on those. So this is a great curriculum. And then we don't actually begin writing the story until about week 9 or 10, somewhere in there. So we're doing a lot of prep work so that by the time we get to writing, it's pretty easy. You already know all your details. It's pretty easy to sit down and kind of knock that out. I will say the guide is not specific. It just says start writing your story, and then it doesn't mention it again until it says your story is due. So make sure you are staying on top of that each week. Or if you buy my daily schedule, I do have that broken down week by week in there. Also, another note is, as the director, I am not the editor of the short story, and so I will be putting together the short stories book, but whatever form mom and dad email it to me in is the form it's going to be printed in. So mom and dad are the editors. You all need to read over your kids' stories, make sure their grammar, their spelling, their formatting, everything is good. And then you have to email the digital copy to me because I have to upload it digitally to the book source that I use. And I will be editing and putting the structure together for that short stories book. Last strand that we go over is debate. And so I gave the parents a little story to read, or probably I gave them a little assignment from mock trial. And I'll ask them, what do you want everyone else to know about this strand? Lots of times, the American Experience storybook it's fun, it's simple, short little stories. So that was enjoyable for a lot of people. Mock trial is kind of exciting. It's also scary. And so those are all normal. That's okay. So when I dive into this, I want parents to know that the American Experience and the debate strand is kind of supposed to be your relaxed strand first semester. So if we're really focusing in on the other strands, you kind of get a little break here. You just have to read one story or maybe 2 stories a week, and then we will come to class and we will discuss. So the question you're supposed to keep in mind while you're reading this is this person a hero worthy to be emulated? All right, we're discussing heroes and what does it mean to be a hero, and do we emulate this person? And so think about that as you go through the story and have some thoughts on it when you come to class. All right, second semester, we're going to jump into mock trial. So the thing I want parents to know here is, first of all, take a deep breath. You don't have to do anything for mock trial as far as helping your student along, teaching them in this strand, okay? We actually ask that you don't read the witness statements. You don't read the mock trial notebook unless you want to read the rules. But we ask that you don't step in because we don't want you coaching your student on strategy at all. This is not a competition. I know it sounds crazy, but it's not a competition. This is a student team project. And we don't want to know what Bob the lawyer on the internet would do if he got this case. And we don't want to know what Uncle Steve would do if he got the case. What we want to know is what would your student do if they got this case, because they have it right in front of them. They have all the information they need inside the mock trial notebook. So it is really well laid out. You don't need to go and research anything else. You need to just point them back to their resources. And I want to empower students to have confidence to show up and do well in this project. So I always encourage my parents, if you step in and start telling your kid what you think they need to do, you are automatically cutting their legs out from underneath them and shooting their confidence to the ground. Because every time you say, well, I think you should do this, your child then hears, I'm not smart enough brave enough, good enough, intelligent enough to do this project, and I just need to listen to someone else. And that is not true at all. I've never had a class or a student that didn't come back from reading it with ideas. Okay. They may not be confident. They may not be great ideas, but everyone has thoughts on it. And we want to encourage them to step into that and to flesh those thoughts out. And how would you write those questions? And how would you question it? And what do you think is important? We're really transitioning here out of the grammar phase into the dialectic phase. And the great thing about the dialectic phase is like you actually have thoughts and good questions, and let's put those to use here. Okay. So your students are capable of doing this. I don't recommend you read the book. I do recommend that you as parents figure out a means for your students to communicate throughout the week. Because if they have questions, they can go to each other to get advice or strategy or brainstorming. That is totally within the rules, and it's best for them to be able to communicate. I also recommend that you set up some outside practice time so that they can practice questioning each other or working through some of the things. We just don't have enough time in class to get all of that practice done. So that will be huge for these students, and it's fun. They enjoy it. I asked the parents to kind of keep their calendar open the last couple of weeks of April until we can get trial times and dates set with the courthouse. And once we get that set, then we'll let you know what to plan on. But please don't plan any vacations the last couple of weeks of April, because we will be trying to compete either week 28, 29, or 30 in the guide. Okay, folks, that is really all I go over at my parent meeting. I hope that was helpful to you and that it gave you some perspective about the trends and the things that I find throughout the years. And if you made it to the end of this video, would you put a heart in the comments below so that I know that helps me and I know that it was helpful to you, and I just love seeing that. So have a great school year and blessings on your journey as a director. Bye.